Algorithm, I come here to make sacrifice of my relatable opening. Take these lost views as offering. Many have already clicked away, bored with the premise of this joke. Take this as proof that I've chosen quality and the hard path, and steer this donkey of a video towards willing eyes and open ears. Guys, gals, and pals, we're gathered here today for the purpose of fan art, but not just any fan art, speculative fan art. What began as a silly art prompt has grown out of control into the beast you're watching now. The project is very simple. Draw Team Fortress 3. If you're not familiar with Team Fortress, or Team Fortress 2 more specifically, it's a long-standing game with a long-standing community, with a host of kind of wacky, semi-cartoon characters, with mostly homemade weapons, and a lot of cartoonish violence. The game can trace its noble lineage all the way back to Holy Quake, when the Titan John Carmack defied the old gods and gave unto humans the gift of the first-person shooter. And for his sins, humanity was cursed with 3 generations of nothing but FPS games. And smack dab in the middle of that curse comes Team Fortress 2. It's silly, it's fun, it's competitive, it has the speed and pace of an Unreal Tournament game, has the sort of goofy sensibilities of Time Splitters, and it has the precision of the Source engine. And this game left a mark. Basically, if you're in the age group where you're joking about being old as a way to cope with the reality of it setting in, Team Fortress 2 probably had a big impact on your life. This game's lived with me for a long time. So as a final act of loving hubris, I'm going to design the sequel that never was. The sequel that never will be. So today's art project is adapting all 9 characters from Team Fortress 2 into my new awesome Team Fortress 3. And it's going to be super good and everyone's going to love it and no one's going to be angry that stuff is different. So gather up and let's push this cart. So our first item of business is to get some basic sketches together and just work out the early ideas for what we're going to do with these characters. And there's 9 different characters, so this is going to get a little unwieldy. Alright, let's set up some basics. Team Fortress has 9 different classes, each with a different job. We divide them into categories based on their role and the psychological profile of the type of person who plays them. Starting with the offensive team, this includes Soldier, Scout, and Heavy. The Soldier's an aggressive line breaker. He move real fast, do big explosions, rocket jumping all over the place. You're looking at the Source engine in 2024, and he's looking at the Quake engine in 1998. He represents the oldest of the old guard in arena shooting. Kind of the oldest of the old guard in shooting games, period. The psycho strafe-hopping, rocket-jumping ancestors who built this great nation. Team Fortress Classic, the Soldier was like kind of a Marine, and in Team Fortress 2, he's like just like a classic World War II soldier guy, so I made mine a Navy dude. The Scout comes from the when you kill a man, you oughta look him in the eye school of thought. He operates with the 2-pronged offense of a shotgun and mad shit talk. His goal is to just kind of be all over. He runs really fast, he can get places other people can't get, shotgun suppositories. He's got a real come over here and 1v1 me energy. And since he can double jump, I came up with a little machine for him to double jump. It's like an air canister looking thing. It didn't need an explanation, it just gives me more stuff to draw. I know you're thinking Val the robot of hit YouTube channel Automaton, you don't need to overdraw these characters, you want Team Fortress to be simple, and I agree with you, but I also want some unique silhouettes, and any motion I can give to a character that's really distinctive to them sort of helps you pick them out of a crowd in a complicated situation. You might argue that the extra design isn't really worth it. You might be right. I wanted to keep the kind of poser energy that the Scout from Team Fortress 2 had. I like that he's a trash-talking jabroni, but he's actually really dangerous. I think there's a nice equivalent in old men who are past their prime, and it's all downhill from here, so they need to make way too big a deal out of the stuff they've accomplished up till now. And that's the kind of trash-talking energy I want to bring. If I win, it's because I'm great, and if you win, it's because you're young. The Heavy's purpose is basically to obstruct. She's like a granddad in a rocking chair. She sits her fat ass down, talks shit, and controls the porch with a gun. And much like a granddad in a rocking chair, it's her nature to die. The Heavy's job is to kind of be like a boss fight, but not really. Like a prize to take. Because she moves slow and doesn't, it's not very dynamic and has a big health bar, but can do a crazy amount of damage, it just scratches the part of your brain that says, yes, I will slay that dragon. Even though the reality of slaying that dragon is truly trivial because extra health means nothing in Team Fortress. And a sniper headshot and a spy backstabber just always right around the corner. But that's basically your job as a Heavy, and it's fun. You can be that boss fight, be the fattest piece of meat, and really make people earn that kill. I dream of a Heavy that does that even more, that really focuses on that aspect of being an obstruction more than anything else. So her whole visual design was set up around a particular pose with her shooting her gun and her coat billowing in the wind. Everything about her is designed to facilitate that animation because I want to do something mechanical with it. And then they can't take it out of the game. Ooh, checkmate. Also, I think she's mostly deaf from shooting her gun so much, so her character would yell under the guise of being forceful, but actually she just doesn't hear very good. Let's take a moment and talk about aesthetic. So first thing is timeline. I have this theory that the Team Fortress games come out in reverse time, with Quake being like out in the sci-fi future, and then like Half-Life being like kind of the 2000s, and then Team Fortress 2 is like has a real like 60s 70s vibe. So mine takes place in the 30s. This gives me access to an industrial aesthetic, which is very fun to work with. It's basically big and square and brutal. Things aren't fanciful, designs are usually very functional. It's basically steampunk's goth cousin, or steampunk's industrial cousin, I guess. Since steampunk is a good cultural touchstone for a lot of people, and it is kind of close, let me show you an example. If you made steampunk power armor, it would look like this in a dress. And if you made industrial power armor, it would look like this in a dress. Does that make more sense? Note the fear in the pilot's eyes. He knows that this machine will be his coffin. And that element is essential. There's another aesthetic thing that you may agree or disagree with, but I'm just going to mention it here real quick. In a lot of these designs, I had characters kind of like trying to carry all their stuff. Yeah, sort of like an action figure, how you kind of want to be able to put the gun on the character's back and the sword in the little sheath and stuff. Team Fortress 2 didn't even remotely try to do this, and neither did any of the ones before it, of course. And I don't think you have to. I just like it. I kind of like the characters having more stuff jangling around on them. I think it just sort of adds to the sort of lively aesthetic of the game. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you don't have to do it with every weapon. But I was thinking as like a happy compromise, maybe you could turn them on or off. Like you could equip like your character putting the bazooka over his shoulder when he doesn't have the bazooka equipped. You can have it set the old way where it just disappears, or you can have it sit on your shoulder. And that would be like a cosmetic you could toggle on and off. This should make everybody happy. And the last thing with the aesthetic, I want to talk about like the colors. I drew everything in this from a pretty limited color palette, and I did that on purpose. I wanted the team colors to really pop in this like bright, like PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64 era way to make them really sharp and identifiable. So as a result of that, I used a lot of like crisp browns for the alternative colors. Like the desired effect works, like the colors certainly pop, but like obviously, like I don't know how that's going to translate into video games. So like don't get hung up on if it's a little too drab or a little too like contrasty or whatever. Like Team Fortress 2 was basically all pastels. So this was kind of like my way of drawing it and making it look a little visually distinct from the other one and connecting it to the kind of earthy, saturated tones of arena shooters from when I was young. But like, use whatever colors you, it's fine. It's not that big a deal. All right, defense team. That's the demo, the sniper, the engineer. Classes are very different, but their objective is very the same. You capture an area from the enemy team, they turn it into a third world country. Proximity bombs, automated motion detecting turret, and a rifleman in a tower for good measure. And the first one to do so will almost certainly be a demo. Because let's face it, the demo was already up there blowing shit up. The demo is the most aggressive of the three, needs the least entrenchment, and is usually pretty mobile. She pins the area down while your sniper finds new sightlines and your engineer moves all his crap up from the back of his van, and then usually moves forward with the rest of the team pretty quickly. This character is a stew of, I think, about 5 different elements. First, replacing sticky grenades with stick grenades, and I do acknowledge that is a pun, and just we as a society are going to have to live with that being buried in the foundation of this great work of mine. Second is the term grenadier, and you can tell me if this is a pun, I'm not sure. According to my Wikipedia research, the term grenadier originally referred to the tallest soldiers because they were the guys who would throw the grenades because they had the biggest reach. So as a result, I thought it'd be interesting to make this design very tall and kind of top heavy. I sort of cinched her belt way above her waist to give her these kind of like high pants look. Item 3, I bet you weren't even keeping track. Just throwing everything. I wanted her to just use her hands. So she throws her sticky grenades, which are actual sticks that'll have like, I think double-sided tape on them or something, but stick-type grenades that will also stick. And then regular grenades, little ball grenades, like classic little bomb-looking guys, or maybe with a button or something. And then for melee, she would just punch people. And so just no weapons on this character, just a pile of explosives. Item number 4 is self-doubt. I had a lot of trouble deciding how much of the original character I wanted to keep. Am I making a Team Fortress 2 Part 2, or am I making my own thing? The missing eye is kind of a fun tradition, though. So I went for a glass eye, which I think is cool and weird and kind of distinct. Not enough characters have glass eyes. I think they're a rad design element that people underuse. The world's full of eye patches. We got plenty of characters with eye patches. We got it. Get in the glass eye game. It's the market's hot right now. The eye was the 5th thing. I know you're not keeping track, but that was 5 things. You'll see here initially I had a very different design in mind for the sniper. My idea was to have a sort of classic pulp movie style Indiana Jonesy adventurer type character. He just worked worse and worse, so I wanted to change it. I decided he was going to be kind of a foppy trick shooting rodeo cowboy, a rhinestone cowboy if you will, like doughy and like kind of obnoxious. It's like the sort of guy who's so cocky, you want to see him fail even though the thing he's trying to do is really cool. You want it to go wrong. So like, yeah, he's like not tough at all. He's an absolute like sponge cake of a man, but he can quick draw down. He can just blow somebody's head off from like a really big distance. Like no matter what, even though he's 100% soft boy, he's still legitimately dangerous, which would give us a lot of fun, just stuff to do with the other characters. Like it's a very easy setup for antagonism and interactions with other people who are actual professionals. Oh, and the monocle is so he can zoom in and out. So I'll talk about it more later. This engineer design comes truly from my heart. This character's demeanor and personality and like design like represents the sort of inner creature that playing engineer brings out in you. Maybe this is particular for people who played Team Fortress 2 when they were like kids, or at least, you know, teenagers. There's something very special about what an engineer can do. You find a little corner and you build a big ass turret with machine guns and rockets and all the cool pickup power-ups that you weren't able to get fast enough when you played Unreal Tournament with your cousins. And you can sit there and hammer away at that turret for as long as you need to. Just hide in that corner, stay safe, and wait, because you know, if you go out there, there's some hyper FPS psychopath jumping around at 1,000 miles an hour who's gonna kill you before you can even level your gun at them. But if they step in here, kaboom, bam, killed you, gotcha, suck it. Loser, look who fucking died. Who's good now? Nice rocket hop. You're dead. Feels so good to get a W way above your pay grade. That childlike sinister satisfaction gave way to this initial design. I had this kind of sniggering character with like the safety helmet on and like all the protective gear. She for sure has a hairnet on under there. I don't know why that vibe was there, but it's the smile. I want her to be very reactive as opposed to, if you didn't play Team Fortress 2, the engineer was like a real chill, very like haha, kind of easygoing McConaughey type dude. I want an engineer that like really loses her shit when she gets kills and like laughs and slaps her knee and like points at people, like real big and boisterous. Now, let's not get too excited. We're going to talk about some background lore. Now, just to make sure I'm bowling with the bumpers on, let's get two things laid down real quick. One, all of this is negotiable. It's just in here to inform how I designed the characters, like how I physically drew them and like the types of personalities I gave them. Like, I'm not married to any of it or anything in the greater Team Fortress 2 lore. Team Fortress games are made mechanics first, lore second. You make a game that works good, and then you can attach the backstory in any way that's fun. And I kind of have the same idea here. So whatever doesn't work, it just isn't canon, and whatever does is. This would also inform like the personalities of the characters. So when you eventually get voice actors in, like they have all this information, and then they can devise a voice and a character, and you know, work out the dialogue and how it's supposed to, and blah 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 blah. Like all the important stuff kind of comes at the end there. All of this is just there to give people kind of tea leaves to read to make the best possible character at the end of the day. All right, everybody on board with that? Great. So my dream is that these guys are like your classic paramilitary dream team. Like, you know, the guy, you know, the team of guys where each dude has like a distinct gun and different personality and that kind of thing, which is what all the Team Fortresses are thematically about. I just wanted to kind of staple that concept down right here. So in my team, each of these characters has their own homemade tools and tactics that they have on display. As mercenaries, they're selling like their tactics and their skills, and for some of them, their inventions. So each of them has like a financial reason to be in here. Like they can't just be good, they have to be flashy because they're selling their services. So you'd always be very aware of how your performance looks. As far as like the weapons and equipment, which are, you know, big stars of the show in a game like this, they're designed to evoke a particular era in history where a lot of real life weapons were really strange and kind of clockwork looking and like borderline steampunk. And in real life, it would be a little bit further back in history than where we're at now. I sort of placed myself where there'd be a nice blend of aesthetics. So very briefly, all of the normal ways that we now take for granted inside of guns were still patented back then. So inventors had to invent around the way a gun should work are often the optimal way. You're just not allowed to do it that way, so you have to keep inventing different ways to try to do it in hopes that you'll come up with something better. Truly just like a wild open prairie of scientists inventing new machines of death that inspired a lot of the mechanical aesthetic of the weapons. Besides, who doesn't like a weapon that feels like a slab of metal? So you've got a team of freelancers, each from a different sort of military or paramilitary background, all with experimental and homemade weapons, all trying to show off so that their team can get another contract in the future. If anything, that's too much background for Team Fortress. And finally, the support team, the chemist, the medic, and the spy. How do you improve upon perfection? Alas, we mortals can only poorly imitate. So I decided to change the pyro. Let me introduce you to the Chemist. What's the difference between a flamethrower and a chemical thrower in a video game? Basically nothing. I just changed it because you can do more things thematically with a chemical thrower than you can with a flamethrower. You could make it more color distinct, and I want this game to have 14 colors, so it's a little bit less battlefield confusion, and is visually kind of neat and sort of era appropriate. I'm thinking the armor is like Battle Asbestos, as sort of a reference to Quake Fortress, where the Pyro wore asbestos body armor. And then, like, as opposed to being super era appropriate, you know, hazmat handling, this suit is like super kitted out and customized for this person in particular, or at least, you know, like the highest end version of it that you can buy, because, you know, it's professionals we're talking here. And then of course we got to talk about the face. I have no idea how well this face idea is going to transplant. I hope it does. I wanted the face to be, you know, simple to the point of like what you see here. It would be hard because like you'd still want to model a face, I think, so that they didn't look like a monster, but you would only like really be able to see like the lines of the eyes and like the eyebrows, so the character can have different expressions. And then when they speak, it would be through a majigger, like an audio thing. So it would be like crunched and a little bit it would be crunched and old radio-y, and would also be in Spanish. That is non-negotiable. Philosophers gather in the temples of great learning to discuss the esoteric facts of the mysterious background of the Pyro in Team Fortress 2. Unspoken in these dialogues, because it is so self-evidently true, is that he is stone-cold Mexican. Anyone still denying it at this point is living in the woods battling saber-toothed tigers for dinner. The spy is like a sort of noir-era thug who is also an actor. I kind of liked the idea of him being this kind of beefy, not quite lumbering, but like this sort of like large presence sort of creeping around, skulking, if you will. And instead of a knife, we have a beaver tail. I personally felt like walloping people in the back of the head was a better expression of the body you inhabit in this version. The spy has like a couple of jobs, and it's a lot to sort of get in thematically. 1, spy can turn invisible. 2, the spy can disguise himself as characters on the enemy team. 3, spy can backstab people and get insta-kills. 4, he can destroy machines. He's like a Pokemon that knows like cut, fly, surf, and strength. He does all the stuff that needs to be done but another class can't do. An oppressor, an instigator, thuggish behavior, if you will. I don't know how he's going to turn invisible yet, but I know that he's going to change disguises by acting. He's going to do an actor pose and be like, and then he will be that character. And I want him to speak to characters in their native languages. So he would speak Spanish to the Pyro, and he would speak Japanese to the soldier. There's a lot of different ways to be a bad doctor, and the medic doesn't necessarily have to be a bad doctor, but I think it works better for our sort of cartoon paramilitary group if she is. So my idea would be that she would be someone who is entirely uninterested in medicine and the application of it, or at least ways that's not her field. I hadn't quite figured out the details of it yet, but I knew that she was going to be someone who was way better at something else, but for some reason is stuck as the doctor. Like, you know that feeling when you're really qualified to do something, but your team already has 3 people doing that something, and they're all doing just a terrible job at it, but it's like a dick move to ask people to switch, and you're a nice player, so you're not going to do it. So you're like, well, what do we need? I guess I'll be a medic. Like that sort of feeling. But god damn it, if you're going to be the medic, you're going to be the highest skill medic this team has ever seen. If I got to play support, I'm going to play support to the bone. You know what? I friggin' love playing support anyway. Those trash bags can keep their KD ratio. I'm going to get some points on the board. So yeah, that's basically my design process for the medic. I don't think I can communicate it any clearer than that. That's 9 characters, bases covered. We got our background and our aesthetic figured out. Nothing to do now but stick our hands in the clay. Remember, we're doing 4 drawings each, 9 characters. So I'll see you on the other side, I guess. Okay, a few things became clear very, very quickly working on the soldier. The first and most significant change for him from his sketch version is that he's way beefier. A big part of this character came together when I just stumbled on the idea that he would be like a power lifter. I don't know why, something about that just like really tickles me and brings the character together, that he would be this kind of squat, sort of beefy, pugly little dude. So our most prominent feature on this guy, and probably the first one you would notice as a player, is the pump action bazooka. Team Fortress 2 has a lot of bumper sticker logic, which is like something that makes sense if you don't look even one step deeper, and a pump action bazooka I think fits nicely in that niche. And to be clear, he would just pump the action. He would never put new rockets in. He would just like bang, 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 and then he would have to and like reload them that way like it's Turok. Something unique I'd like for the soldier to do is be able to use the pistol or the shotgun. Just to bring you in the know, there's like kind of like a standard pistol and shotgun that a few characters in Team Fortress 2 use, and it really depends on their character. Basically, people who do like burst damage with their main weapon will usually have the pistol as their backup because it lets them like bang, bang, bang. And then characters that have kind of a continual stream of damage for their main weapon will often have the shotgun for their backup, so they have like a burst option. But I want the soldier to have both. He's the attack guy. He should just have both options, and then he can just get unlocks from both of them, and I just think it's a rad thing. And then I'd like it if he had a little spot on his back where he tucks it away, and it would be different for if you have the shotgun or the pistol equipped. Like, that'd be cool. Someone who is real eagle-eyed could tell at a glance, but mostly it would just be like a nice little detail to have it jangle in there. And if it doesn't like communicate clearly, I expect he puts his bazooka just like upwards over his shoulder, like a really quick motion, and then it just settles there against his backpack. Kind of gives you a halfway house between him putting it away and it going into a pocket dimension. I like a lumbering character with a regular sword. I think it's kind of an underused visual. So having this kind of this sort of wide, squat kind of power lifter guy, but with just like a navy saber, there's this interesting kind of whiplashy, almost fly swatter dynamic to it. So personality-wise, I wanted this guy to have kind of like a Kuwabara punk energy. You know, he's in the role of the sort of like improper Japanese character. Taunts and callouts would be like self-aggrandizing instead of like straight up insults. And then when he's like alone, he's like a very different vibe with himself. Like, he'd probably be way more frazzled when no one else can hear. And I kind of like to think like when he talks to members of his own team, he's more military, but when he talks to the other team, it's like full-on rival school rumble. But of course, every troubled kid needs like a flaw, like a chink in their evil armor. And his is that he likes tinkering, and he does really intricate work, like cleaning and managing like his weapons and like, you know, shaving parts and doing whatever else gun nuts like to do with their guns. So that's sort of like his character soft spot. I just want to reiterate, with me as the art manager for this project, we are dumping money into making characters extremely expressive. We are putting all of our funding front to back into giving wide hand-keyed animations when characters talk, and like making everything on them jiggle and move around and like be really alive with their packs and pouches and guns and stuff, because I like the motion that it gives to something. But I think really expressive characters give a game a lot of extra life. So I sort of wanted all the characters' personalities to be not so big and brash that it becomes obnoxious, but large enough that we could give them a lot to say. It'll be a world of all kind of big personalities, and that'll kind of grade us on a curve a little bit. But I never want to go so far into it where every character is full cartoon. There's sort of a sweet spot you have to lean in, and I wouldn't know how to communicate it. I'm not an audio director, but just bear that in mind, that that's kind of like where I would want to pipe these ideas as it gets into the voice acting stage of the game. Visually, I wanted to keep both his hands in a sort of similar position. I didn't figure it out when it came to the melee weapon. I didn't want to have him just kind of have his hand up there like a dip, but with the pistol and the shotgun and the bazooka, it's all kind of two hands up above the chest, sort of close to the chin. I was kind of had this idea that it would help with his silhouette. I made a lot of design choices based on that, but I don't know that all of them worked out. But this one in particular, that's why I kind of drew him like that. And it gives him this kind of manic energy that I like. Having the gun like up so high while he's running and doing stuff, it makes it look like his whole life is kind of down the barrels. There's something like at ease about him holding a gun up like in the iron sights that I feel like I enjoyed and communicated something interesting about his character. If like the teams had captains, I would want him to be the captain of the attack team, because I feel like he and the old man scout would have a lot of natural friction, and I see the heavy as kind of a loudmouth instigator. There's a term in my group of friends called math vision. It's kind of an inside joke we have for when we play tabletop games like D&D and stuff. A friend of the show, Corey, coined it. Basically, somebody would say, how far does it look like it's 60 feet? Does it look like 65 feet? And he would be like, you don't have math vision. Like, it's between 50 and 70. Like, that's already pretty accurate for how far away you are. And it's a good phrase, because where there's a condition where you don't have math vision, there's a condition where you do. And that condition is 2,000 hours of playing Demo Man in Team Fortress 2. At least that's how I imagine it. When I close my eyes and think, what does your average demo man see? I imagine a world of nothing but trajectories, where everything is just a matte painting upon which is gestures and flow of where all of the world will be in roughly 3.5 seconds. A cursed life, always to see things as they will be, never as they are. So that's how I think my demo man just is. I think that is her main personality trait, is that she has crazy math vision. So whereas the Team Fortress 2 demo man was some kind of drunken master math wizard, ours is someone who is really good at logistics and carrying out like multi-stage plans, which to me just feels right for somebody who is an explosives expert. And then we sort of overrepresented this on her design a little bit by making all of her equipment about like conveyance. Like conveyance is the concept of all of her gear. So for her regular grenades, which we just did this like classic little ball design with a bright light on it so that it's really clear where it's moving and what team it's coming from. And then on her waist, I put these little dangling things that to me, I imagine would be like a little dispenser. Like she would put her hand down and it would pop one out into her hand and she can throw it. And then her reload would be just like rotating her belt, I think, or maybe just switching, I don't know, something like that. But that's where she would get them from. So it's all about conveyance. And then on the other side, she has these two very different elements. The stick grenades, which you'll kind of notice in the back there, it's on like they're like a series of little pouches. I actually designed a version where that itself was small and mechanical. If you look in the very top right of the image, that's what that evolved into. But I had this idea that it would be kind of spring loaded and be feeding her one at a time. And then I have this little spring canister on her waist that is drawn in very different sizes in different images. I was kind of trying out different ideas, but the idea would be that the sticky grenades are on little like fishing lines basically, and she would throw them and they would stick to stuff and blah blah blah. In her hand on screen you would see her holding the strings, and maybe there'd be a little number above them or something, like a UI element that would tell you how many you have out. And then when you detonate them, as they are these sticky bombs quote unquote, like from the other Team Fortress 2 game, you yank the strings and it makes them all explode, including ones that like you have in midair. So it's this two-handed operation where she throws it and the other hand is holding the string, and then if you right click she'll yank it and blow it up in midair or wherever it happens to be stuck. And then my idea for another way to make that interesting is that if she gets too far from the strings, they'll just blow up automatically, and you'd be able to see like a very thin gossamer line, like a little line of shine that kind of gives her away where she's hiding if she runs away from them. So that I thought that would be kind of interesting, just as another way to make the character a little more dynamic. I think she's middle-aged, I'm not sure. I tried to make the glass eye very prominent in like every image. I think it adds to the creepiness of it if you sort of can't get away from it. If there's any character on the roster that's going to be like divisive, it's the Chemist. But I feel like maybe I can help a little bit by saying something that I don't want. I don't want the Chemist to be like a mascot. I'm not trying to make him like cute or like dollable or like very toyetic. That's not the objective here. This is the design I came to, and I'm really happy with it and I like it a lot. He just seems very mascot-y because I made him doughy. And I don't want to make a character where the whole joke is just the juxtaposition using like chemical warfare and then having the voice of a speak and spell. You may recall from the earlier bit that I demand that he speak Spanish and through a bad speaker, which I still demand. I don't want to change that. I would give this whole project up before I gave up that concept. But I'm not going to make those kinds of jokes, and I'm not going to encourage the voice actor to do so either. The joke will be, as the joke has always been with the pyro, that you cannot understand what they're saying and you can't figure out who they are. I purposely designed the face to be like vaguely androgynous, so it's sort of difficult to tell. We minimized the details down to nothing. In the drawings, I on purpose kind of varied between shapes of the face to make it a little bit harder to pin down. And I want enough light coming up on their face that you can't really tell what the character is supposed to be. And then we add a language barrier and a technology barrier. It's everything I can do to keep the character a mystery while not just doing the exact same joke. Why cling to this concept at all, you might ask? Because I think it's really funny. I just love it. I think it's delightful, and I think it should be a tradition. And doing it again, but doing it differently, was a fun challenge. All right, let's talk weapons. There are very few video games, precious few, that give you like a gas thrower, like a chemical thrower. It's so important to get it right. I don't know exactly how to get it right. I don't know what you need to give that feeling maximum satisfaction as a weapon. You gotta do it. This is a time to invest some extra work, try a lot of prototypes. It needs to make the right noise. It needs needs to have the right impact. It needs to give the right amount of menace. It needs to be the right color. Mechanically, it'll work probably just like the flamethrower from TF2. I don't even care that much. If you need to change it to make it more thematic and work better, like that's fine. But like the basic idea of being the spray weapon that leaves like that sort of leaves a problem on the character. The damage over time would be like a little smoke cloud on them, I suppose. Just something like that. They'd be poisoned instead of burned, but mechanically, what's the actual difference? The real thing is when you pull the trigger, it should make a noise. Part on it should spin and move a little gear that makes it look like it's actually pumping the little atomizer on the bottom. The chemical it sprays out should just be like a viscous, sinister hose of smoky liquid, and it should visibly cover them in like gaseous, acidy something with suitable flailing and screaming as appropriate. So something that's really different in this version of the game, keen players may have noticed it, no air blast for the pyro, which is a very big deal. The pyro kind of functions as the hombre class, like he's just sort of everybody's buddy, and anywhere you're standing, if there was a pyro near you, there's something useful he can do for you. So this version doesn't have that. What I would have him do in lieu of that is he would right click to make a little field of smoke, like a little damage over time patch, and that would be a way for him to cover a spot for a small, not a long time, like maybe a couple of seconds, but it would allow him to turn around and cover somebody for a moment so that he could protect a sentry or a spy or a hallway briefly, like while he's still out of the room. Is that worth giving up air blast? Probably not. Air blast is way better. It's so useful in a million ways, but this would be fun to play with, and it's important that you get to have all the fun that a chemical thrower gives you instead of clinging to old ideas. I'm sure people will come up with a million cool, weird, niche uses for it anyway, because that's just the way this goes. And the air blast is not lost to us. It's just hanging out with the scout these days. And of course, you know the rule. If your main weapon hits fast, your secondary you get the shotguns. I don't think anyone carries the shotgun that I designed better than the Chemist. It looks particularly good on the Engineer, but something about the Chemist's like kind of round design against the sharpness of that shotgun, I really like it. It's very crisp. So what solidified about the Scout was how much I liked having this canister in his arm just all the time. Look at him, he's just got it like under his arm like a football everywhere he goes. It's interesting because it's like a weapon, it's like his signature move, but he has to kind of like, he carries it cradled like a baby. There's something poetic buried in there, but I can't quite put my finger on it. So let's start with visually, since he has to carry his little canister around like a football baby, he has to do everything else one-handed. So I knew from the beginning he was going to have his own shotgun. Because he's the scout, shotgun's kind of his signature weapon. Sort of a nothing joke, the scout's gun in Team Fortress 2 is called the scatter gun, which, you know, is just like an old-timey kind of colloquialism for a shotgun. So my scout, his is called the blunderbuss because it's like a generation older, old-timey name for a shotgun, even though his shotgun, of course, is not a blunderbuss. But the real gimmick is that it would have like a shoulder strap, and it's like a pump action gun, but the whole bottom of the gun is like the slide. I tried to communicate it a few times in these little drawings, but it never quite worked out for me. But the idea would be that he would shoot and then push his arm forward, and that would pull the slide back. That's like the pump action, and then he would pull it back and shoot again. And that's how he would like that's his like sort of technique there. I don't know if he invented that. It feels like a homemade solution to a gun problem. It is inspired by my buddy Christian getting two Nerf guns and attaching the cock slides on them to a chain. That way he could pull one back to cock the other and then reverse to shoot, which I thought was just like a genius way to turn two handguns into a machine gun if you're a kid with Nerf guns. And I feel like Nerf gun logic is very applicable to the world of Team Fortress 2. Backup weapon, of course, he gets the pistol since he's got a shotgun as his main weapon. And I went with an axe for his melee weapon. I like translating the idea of scout in a military role. There's like some thematic lines. It doesn't work perfectly, but I do think it's interesting because it does give him sort of a woodsman-y sort of vibe. But of course, the main attraction is the air canister. So the way I imagine the air can would work is it has like a charge bar in the side, and it would give you like so many uses. And then when you jumped, you would just pop one off. You could only use one per jump, I guess. Maybe not, but probably. Or maybe it increases in cost. So like, let's say you can have 4 uses of the air canister. Your first jump uses 1 and your second one uses like 2. And then you can't jump again, but then since you have to wait for it to recharge, and then also that you'd be able to use it as a air blast to push people around and to knock smoke and fire off of people. So you would need a button to do that too, but that, you know, it's also from the same resource. So you have like different ways of getting around and moving people around. So that's your role as the scout, is to kind of push people around, which brings us back to the scout's personality. personality, which is that of a bully. It's also his playstyle. His job is to force you to go one place or another, to get around you so that you have no choice but to stop and deal with him, and to go after classes that aren't good, like duelists who can't handle his agility. So this pushes that a little bit further into like the next level bullying, where he can like shut off abilities and move you around and move himself around really effectively. And so that's your sort of extra scout games. You have the mini game of managing that meter. And while I'm a firm believer in weapon changing as a design idea, you know, as opposed to a normal hero shooter where all of your different guns, quote unquote, are like kind of on buttons, where you pull, you know, like one use things, or they're more akin to abilities, and then you just have your standard gun you use most of the time. I think you should change weapons. I think having weapon swap is a fun thing to have in games. It's a little bit antiquated, but it's enjoyable to play with, and it adds a skill layer that I think most Team Fortress 2 players would be sad to lose. But this air canister is going to be kind of an exception. Like, you wouldn't pull it out like a normal gun. It would be on a button somewhere. Maybe whatever the alternate fire button is, it'll be there. Because just like in real life, the left hand is the alternate fire of the main hand. Personality-wise, I want him to be leathery. Mean-spirited, like a little disrespectful, calls people Sally. You know the type of guy I'm talking about. Staying right between the crosshairs of cowboys and huge nerds. The more I thought about the sniper, the more I wanted him to actually get along with his own team. I kind of thought it'd be funny if he was this sort of, he's like really cocky, he's like clownishly antagonistic, but he's their crew. He's their cocky, antagonistic guy, and he usually gets the job done. I was never super good at most video games. Most of my friends are better than me at all of the things we played competitively, and there's a certain feeling to playing against your friend who's beaten you a million times, and you're just like, oh, maybe I'm going to eke out a win today. Like, the competition is real, like fire is there. But when that same person plays against like an outsider, you're behind them 100%. Like, you're so excited to see the fists that beat you slay another. So that's how I imagine the relationship between the sniper, the engineer, and the demo. Like, they probably have to put up with his shenanigans like the most, but he does get the job done. He is effective. And when other people talk trash, I imagine they would be sort of gleefully behind him. And I think in general, he would be really overly competitive. Like, he'd be the type of guy who's always comparing scores and stuff. Like, never turns down a bet. It's like always looking for new, like, little ways to compete with people. And deep down, I think it's because he craves their respect. All right, so let's talk about the snipering itself with this character, because I feel like I've left that very underdeveloped so far. So two things. His gun is a old-timey type of rifle. There's this kind of like bendy reversey thing in sort of nerd sniper culture that like not that older guns are better, but like antiquated weapons connect to a more refined shooter or something like that. Two guns can be equally, you know, in practical terms, like who cares the difference between them, but like the marksman would have a bolt action. Like, that's how you communicate in a video game that a character is precise and has these sniperly arts or whatever the crap. You give them slow firing bolt action weapons. It's like a practical thing too, because it helps balance out sniper rifles in video games, so it's kind of a match made in heaven. But the two problems sort of reinforce each other. So I took that ball and ran with it, since our sniper the generation before uses like a bolt action rifle, which our game has kind of taken place, you know, like 30s era, like that's sort of the era of technology and dress we're going for. Bolt action rifles would still be super normal, like all over the place. Like, there would still be, maybe not the dominant weapon anymore, but they'd be very, very common. So I wanted him to have a gun that is a step older. So you have to follow my logic on this one. The idea of the bolt action being the gentleman's weapon, or like the sniper's weapon or whatever, it's about like reliability. Like, you open this chamber yourself and close it and kaboom, and like one big bullet, and it's the gun that won't jam on you because you can open the thing and whatever bull crap. That's not true, but that's the vibe that giving someone a bolt action gun goes for. So before bolt action guns, there was a lot of different ideas for how to do this, and one of them was called the Remington rolling block. It was just a thick, sludgy, reliable gun. Loads one bullet at a time from the back. So yeah, that's our next logical step, is an even slower, even more reliable gun. And it's a good time to introduce the element of the two different gun holsters. So he's got like a sawed-off rifle, basically. The design is based on that Remington rolling block, which other than the weird hammer in the back looks like a normal rifle. But it's chopped off because he's a cool guy. And then it has like a collapsible, like the rickety 1930s version of a collapsible stock. So it's like an erector set style, like 3 pieces of metal. But it lets him load it, or lets him put it away in like the fat holster on his right thigh. So his right thigh is loaded for bear, and his left thigh has a secondary in it. And I don't know if you want to like reverse the way they're set in the thighs. I kind of had the idea that he would use the gun in his left holster just left-handed as like a flex, and then the gun in the right holster right-handed, but you may want to do reverses on them so that one handle's pointed out and one handle's pointing in, so it looks like so he can draw them both into his dominant hand, whichever one you wanted to do. But anyway, yeah, so the whole stock would fold up and he would be able to holster it that way. And then when he pulls it out, the way that I would want him to zoom in, he's got a monocle on one eye, so most of the time he would have that eye closed, and then you would hit a button, whatever your zoom button is, and he would switch. So you would get zoomed in, but the picture would be really blurry, and that's your like sort of charge up. If you don't know, in Team Fortress 2, you zoom in and then you have like a little thing that charges up that determines how much damage you do. In this game, instead of that, you have like the blur, which I think would reduce your damage a little bit. Anyway, but so the longer you're locked into zoom, everything becomes clearer and clearer and your vision unblurs. And when you go back the other way, when you unzoom, you have the same problem where everything around you is blurry and you have to slowly come back into focus. So you have to literally decide your focus. And then because you got the big monocle, you can animate it very brightly and prominently so that someone could see which one that you're in. If they saw your big eye in the monocle, they would know that you're zoomed in. And if they saw the monocle eye closed, they would know that you're not. Not that that'd be a super easy tell in a chaotic fight, but Team Fortress 2 players are crazy. So like, don't underestimate them. But yeah, I was really excited about that gimmick. I devoted a lot of time in the script to it, but now that I've said it, I actually realize it's pretty simple. You right click to zoom in, and then it unblurs slowly, and then when you go back, you're back to normal, and that unblurs slowly. So following our rule of his main weapon does burst damage, so the secondary needs to do damage quickly. But he's going to have a different gun than the normal pistol. The sniper does in Team Fortress 2, and why not do it here? I can. It's a chance to make it a little bit more thematic. And I would want him to have a better than average pistol, because he needs to be able to fend off spies and scouts with it. Like, he needs to be able to attack really fast characters, and just giving him a slightly above average weapon to do that with is fine, because he's going to get caught by surprise most of the time anyway. So the idea is it's going to work just like a really fast firing weapon. It's going to essentially be like an SMG, but he's going to pull it out and just hammer fan cowboy shoot really fast. And the visual on the gun, you'll see it has like this wide case, so it's got like a square sort of, maybe it's rounded on both sides, I'm not sure, but it has a cylinder in there that's like a little chain that holds, I don't know how many bullets, 12, whatever the amount the game needs to be fair. And then yeah, and you just shoot bah, 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 like as fast as you can, and when you reload it, he reloads it one bullet at a time, but just really quickly, just like comically fast. But it gives you sort of a rhythm, like you need to sort of recharge it while you're sort of spacing out your shots. Like, it gives you something to kind of manage. If you're not familiar, in Team Fortress 2, characters reload at the speed of light. It's very, very fast, and it's often automatic, or anytime you're not shooting, your character will just be reloading. So this isn't something you're going to have to click back and forth and worry about. It just means that your gun sort of has like a recharge time while you're trying to get a spy off you or something. And then visually it's fun because it's another cowboy gun, and it's another sort of faux mechanical cowboy gun. For melee weapon, we keep it simple, going with a machete. I like it. It's cowboy. Nobody else has anything quite like it. It will be visually distinctive from the soldier's sword, and it works with the character. And it looks good kind of hanging off of his back, which I think is a neat element. As a longtime medic player, I had a lot of opinions on how this class should go together. I wanted it to be more aggressive, I wanted it to be more active, I wanted there to be more decisions made, but you gotta make sure you can still right-click people. That's just, Team Fortress 2 is so absolutely cuckoo bananas insane. If the medic couldn't heal by locking on to people, I don't even know how they would play this game. So I've kept that element, but let me get around to it. I have removed the medic's secondary weapon and replaced it with nothing. So the way I want her to work is she has a gun and a melee weapon, and they are both her healing weapon, and they can both do damage. It just depends on who you hit with it. So the melee weapon, when you stab somebody, it heals them. The gun, when you shoot somebody, it heals them. Obviously, it would scale. The melee weapon would heal way more. The gun would heal a lot less. But wait, there's more. So the way I would want it to work specifically, the ranged weapon would heal you continually while it's on you. The melee weapon, you would stab somebody, and they would heal a little bit over time. The difference is important because there's more coming. But that would basically be the idea. So if you have The melee weapon, you can run around stabbing everybody and getting healing sort of locked onto different peoples, or getting people like a little bit of a heal while they go out into a fight. But I would let you just hold right click and your character would just keep re-stabbing the person that they just stabbed to heal. And then you'd be free to look around and stuff. As long as you're in range, she would just keep stabbing at them, even if the animation gets a little bit janky. But just that way you can still kind of like keep your awareness while healing somebody and then sort of switch in and out when you want to be focused. And then the gun would be the same way. You could right click and it would lock onto whoever you healed last, or you could shoot it manually and it would heal. The downside to it being locked on, obviously, is that you turn to shoot somebody, you can't, because you're in the middle of doing that. You have to let go and then click the other button, which is small, but it does matter. All right, so we already got a lot more going on. The medic's got like a laser gun now and like a cattle prod that heals people. We're just throwing a lot of concept out there. So let's stop and break some of it down. To keep down our road of the medic being an embittered expert at something else, I think in my head canon, what she invented was a type of laser, like energy beam type deal, but the 1930s version of it. So it would be really like wimpy and non-hostile. Like I'm imagining people like, look at this, and like waving their hand in front of it. It doesn't even burn your hands, but it's like giving them cancer. But so just the idea that she wouldn't be taken seriously at all in that, and then she fell back on like a medical career, and then she ends up as a freelancer because it is a place where she can combine her sciences, try her evil laser radiation energy technology, I don't really know what it is, with her medical skills. I don't imagine her invention has any relation to the medic gun from the other game, or maybe it does. I don't know. I don't care. If people like her, then yes, and if not, then no, definitely not. All right, so that's just enough. Like that's enough extra stuff that you'd be fine and be like, okay, cool, a little more skill medic, something new mechanics to play with. But wait, there's more. There's one more thing that I want in here. This isn't a visual thing. This doesn't matter for the idea of this as an art video. It just matters to me personally in rounding out the design of the character. So the medic would have like an extra thing that they can open. It would be sort of like the spy's disguise kit or the engineer's little PDA that he uses to build stuff. Just like another item that opens her bag. Now visually, that bag connects to both of her weapons. It connects to the back of the cattle prod and to the laser gun, the Radiator 9000. So it connects to the back of the cattle prod and the Radiator 9000. So you can see that there is a connection between those two things just visually when you look at the character. So in the bag, there would be like a little option you can switch between, and it changes a secondary effect on your tool. This might get a little bit confusing, but just like bear with me. This is a labor of love and I really wanted to get it in the video. Both weapons heal all the time, but they each have a secondary extra ability. Hang on a second, guys. Some idiot's got his foghorn on in the middle of the damn day. Hey, while we're waiting for this, remember to like and subscribe. Damn it. Go. Okay, where was I? The cattle prod overheals people, and the gun makes them move faster. And you can switch between those. The cattle prod comes with the overheal and the gun comes with the speed up, but you can switch them back and forth. If you ever added another one into the game, like an alternate gun, it could have a different secondary ability, but that you'd still be able to switch it back and forth with the cattle prod. And if you got a different cattle prod that had a different ability, you'd be able to switch that onto the gun. But mechanically, it'll always be the same. The cattle prod does a version of it that lasts longer, that stays on the character after you stab them, and the gun will have a version of it that lasts as long as you're linked to them or healing them. So you can do it from a little bit of a distance. And of course, the linked version would be probably a little bit weaker. So they both heal all the time and give a little extra bonus depending on how you have it set up. You wouldn't need to mess with this at all. Just right out the gate, the character will work. And if you want to change these around for playstyle wise, it would probably open up options and give you stuff to do, but it would work well enough just out the gate. So it's not like something you need to like be able to figure out to play the medic. It's just a little extra thing for people who want to change up the playstyle. And the final thing is it would change the way your Uber works. In Team Fortress 2, the medic saves up like a big powerful ability that makes people invincible traditionally, and you use that to stomp up into areas that otherwise you wouldn't be able to break through, where there's just too many bombs and turrets and stuff. Ours would work very similar. It would charge up over time from using healing and, I don't know, probably completing objectives and stuff. Just like anytime you score, you should probably get some. But we get two different types of Ubers because we have these two different abilities that I set up earlier. So if you Uber with whatever you have the overheal set to, which is by default just your cattle prod, if you use your Uber with that, it gives them a giant overheal, like a mega huge overheal, so that they can still serve the same purpose of stomping through and trying to push through an objective, but they are technically defeatable. And it should give you a big overheal as well so that you can stay with them. Or I don't know, maybe it stays on them so you don't need that, whatever. The point is, it does a giant version of that ability. And the gun, since that's the one that makes you go fast, if you use the Uber on that, it makes the character dodge attacks. attacks, so you just don't take damage from stuff that hits you. But you would have to keep the Uber on them the whole time. So you'd have to stay locked and chase them and keep them locked in, but then they would be basically bulletproof. And if you switched them, you have kind of the opposite of that, where if you have the speed up, I know this is confusing, just stay with me, it's fun for me. If you have the speed ups transferred over to the cattle prod, then that will give them like true invincibility, but for not a very long time, because you just shoot it on them and they run out, and then it'll run out when it's gone. And then you'll have the overheal on the gun, which gives you a more traditional type of Uber, where you're using it and you're continually putting a fat overheal on people. Is that enough examples? I think you get it. 2 guns, 2 abilities, switch them back and forth. You have a regular hit, you have an Uber, and you gotta hit enemies too. You thought we were done. The overheal attachment reduces people's max HP after you hit them for a short period of time. So if you jab somebody with the cattle prod while you're healing people, if you jab an enemy, you do damage and then lower their max HP for a while, which is the opposite of doing an overheal, which means you can guess what the secondary does. It slows people. When you shoot people with the secondary, it slows them. Or if you switch them, it means your cattle prod slows people and your gun reduces people's max HP. Depends on what situation you're dealing with. And so, I hope I delivered as promised, a medic that can still be played brain dead, but has a lot of available options for nuance. I do not think that she's a mad doctor, but I do think she's an angry doctor. She doesn't like to help people or heal them. I don't think that's really interesting to her. I think she's very good at it, and it gives her an opportunity to test her science. I think if she did surgery on you, you would need to be like making constitution checks every step of the way to make sure she doesn't sew something up wrong or do something rough. But I do think of her as a character with a sense of humor. I think she has a wry, kind of sinister classy, if that makes sense. Like on the alignment axis, it would be on the cross section between sinister and like, but still kind of fun to listen to, where it's not so hammy that it's obnoxious. Think of like a mad scientist character, but like the kind that mostly talks to themselves instead of, you know, cackling maniacally and yelling things from balconies. But I do want her to laugh when she gets kills. If she gets a kill streak on somebody, it should just be like increased and increasingly genuine laughter coming out of her. Just like real heartfelt, like tear in your eye belly laughs. The Heavy was designed really from the gun outward. The first thing I knew was that she was going to have a big square kind of bricky gun that was always visible on her model even when she wasn't using it. Obviously making it square makes it very different from the minigun from, you know, the Heavy in Team Fortress 2 that people know and love so well. But it lines up really well with what I wanted to do with her character. She is lightly inspired by a real life kind of mad scientist named Hiram Maxim, who invented like oppression. Like he found a way to make that into a gun. Anyway, you can look it up. It's called the Maxim gun. It's extremely famous and has a long, bloody history. And Hiram Maxim himself is a fascinating guy. She's a wealthy gun designer. In my script, it says gun design her. Nailed it. She probably runs some kind of steel works or like metal fabrication factory and has gotten herself interested in the design of weapons because it's very profitable. So she designs this really awesome big machine gun and is insistent that it will be like this fantastic gun that will change war. And it's like reliable and functional and blah, blah, blah. But just nobody's buying this type of machine gun anymore. We're past World War I. We're like right on the edge of like truly modern machine guns. This thing's like antiquated out the door. So she herself carries it around and uses it kind of as a way of advertising. She is hoping to drum up sales for the gun specifically. Her version, I think, is modified for her to be able to carry around. I think the normal one would be like an installed version, and she would have had this one like modified roughly for her to use it. And then of course you know in your heart the version she has is infinitely better. It's like hand tooled and like carefully constructed. It's like the best of the best because it's the show off model. So the one she actually takes into a fight is like top notch, top of the pile. But the actual one she sells is probably like mediocre at best, in spite of its poor technology. And as a nod to antiquated gun tactics at the time, the idea of her walking around with this thing at waist level firing at wantonly is based on the BAR. It's a long story to tell, but basically somebody had the idea, what if we made a gun that fires at a normal speed and you walk forward and shoot every other step with your coat blowing dramatically in the wind? It sounds like I made that up. I did not. Anyway, so it is a battle tactic designed for a gun that I don't think was ever used in that way or for that purpose, but it fits on her character because she is huge. It fits our design idea of her being this big, obstinate roadblock, and it is in line with the way the minigun was held in Team Fortress 2, which I think would make her very identifiable on the battlefield as the role that she is. She would probably need to be even wider than I drew her. I was hoping the gun would take up more space, but the idea is that she is tall, but as she shoots, she grows grows wider as her coat kind of flaps, so you sort of notice the menace kind of grow as she goes. And having her kind of stomp up the field, like firing dramatically while her coat billows in the wind, I think is a really perfect analogy because it looks really cool and it sounds really cool. But the place you're walking to is a corner around which you'll be shot by every gun in creation simultaneously. Everybody gets their moment. Notable details, since she has a fast-firing main weapon, of course, we give her the shotgun as the secondary, so she has a burst fire option. And you can see I really wanted her to use it one-handed. I don't want her to ever take her gun off or like hide it anywhere. I think it makes the gun seem larger if it's always present. So I had the idea that she would just overarm the shotgun and then do kind of the lame version of the Matrix 2 reload where she would just like thrust the gun outward and like the weight of the pump action would like cock it and then she would yank it back. And then for a melee weapon, this would be, she has like a clearing rod like for the gun. I think in universe she stuffs it down the front of the gun like it's its actual clearing rod, but she uses it as a melee weapon, which to me is evocative of a rich guy wanging people with his cane. Look up JP Morgan for stories on that. So yeah, and it's physically imposing. I like the idea of her like swinging downward, holding this stick kind of at the 3/4 part of the haft, like makes her look like an ogre, which to me is fitting because that is the kind of rich person I think I want her to be. I think I want her to be a very like stuffy industrialist, very condescending. I built myself up from nothing even though my dad was rich. She definitely buys whiskey based on like how expensive it is and not how good it is. I want her to have the personality of like a guy with a mutton chop mustache, if that makes sense. And then the last thing mechanically, I gotta get one in before it's over. I like the idea of as she winds up and shoots, she gets like harder to kill or more obstinate. I think the more she shoots, the more the coat flaps. She's gonna get like scaling damage reduction. So the more she is at it, the higher it gets. So it gives her a reason to like install. But I don't think her gun would start out weak. I think you just come out full, like just full blast. So you can always pop off and shoot people. Yeah, you're not like restrained to having to wind up to shoot, but defensively you want to do it. You want to wind up so that you don't get killed super fast. And then I also like the idea of bullets that go through her, like through her area or her cloak or something, getting some kind of damage reduction so she can physically protect people behind her as the roadblock character. So when she's clogging up the hallway, she's really clogging up the hallway. Or maybe her hitbox just like kind of is bigger while she's doing that, so shots that would normally go past would hit her instead, and she will get armor to compensate that, so it makes her better at kind of holding down the line. And then the last thing you can do is like the longer she shoots, her accuracy shifts to the other side. It's like, you know, with like a gun like that, when you're just trying to clear out hallways and stuff, sometimes you want it to be inaccurate. You don't want like a laser gun. So maybe when she shoots, it's actually pretty accurate starting out, so you can use it to kind of track targets if you want to be a skill heavy. But when you're actually just suppressing areas, you want to hold it down for the damage reduction and for the wide spread of fast firing damage that then you get cover and you don't even have to micro aim. We have to be very careful with the engineer because the engineer has, I think, the most potential to define the art style in this game. When you think of Team Fortress 2, that turret, that faceless pile of guns is like literally a mascot. Turrets are an artisan craft, like shotguns. They have to be designed with a certain je ne sais quoi. Now, we also got to talk about the dispenser and the teleporter, but let's talk about the engineer herself first. So you'll notice right away the engineer kind of has 3 guns. Couple of reasons. One, I got rid of the wrench. I didn't want to keep it. I didn't want to use a hammer. I wanted to do something else that was more evocative of the era, and so I went with a riveting gun. 2, as a little piece of background lore just for me and you, I think the engineer invented the pistol and the shotgun. I think they're both actually her creations. So that's why they're distributed amongst the team, because she's an actually good engineer. So she was able to make duplicates and different people can use the ones that they want. So being kind of the most technologically advanced character, she just doesn't have to subscribe to having a melee weapon. Now that being said, the rivet gun is basically a big melee weapon. It's going to work just like it. It's going to do most of its damage at point blank range. It repairs your turrets and builds your stuff. The only difference I think I would have it do is I'd let you hold down like right click to charge it up to shoot it further. But otherwise it would just be like a thunk, 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 like a nice repetitive dry firing weapon that gives you the satisfying sound of a piece of metal slamming into a piece of metal and would shoot a little distance like a slightly larger reach melee weapon. That way it's kind of your all the time tool as an engineer. You don't have to switch for for that like slightly out of melee range engagement. You can go from what you're doing right into a fight, and there's just one less kind of thing you have to worry about because you have a little bit of reach to contend with people for. And it would also let you heal your turret and destroy sappers from slightly further away. I think it would scale extremely hard the amount it healed or repaired or whatever, depending on your distance, so you still want to be point blank. But anyway, that's enough of that. Most people don't care about it. It looks cool, and she is like a mirror, Rosie the Riveter is the TLDR on that one. So now the pistol and the shotgun both do their job, but interestingly, it does give her both the middle of the road fast damage option and the middle of the road burst damage option. So as an engineer, you're never really out of options. You can do a little bit of everything, which has always been true of the engineer, but I think it's very easy. If you've only played Team Fortress 2 a little bit, you don't appreciate how cool it is that he has the pistol and the shotgun. I got really invested in the idea of her carrying her different machine parts, like her turret and stuff, having them like folded up on her. It's neat because it kind of makes you able to see whether or not she has a spare turret in her backpack, or like if she's deployed it, and the same thing for like her dispenser and stuff. Like it'd be cool for her to actually throw it out and throw it down. And since you have to destroy the old one before you can build a new one, you would destroy it and then it would just appear on your back again or whatever, and you'd deploy a new one. But you'd always be able to tell like what part of the process the engineer is in just by looking at them, whether or not they're carrying the lunch pail or the little disc thing. So the lunch pail is the turret. Now this was really hard to ascribe in art form, so I hope I can communicate it clearly. It looks like a little lunch pail, and you would throw it down, and the top of it would pop up, just the little lid part, and it has a little turret that shoots little piddly pistol bullets. It tracks very quickly. It's everything you expect a little machine gun turret to be. Then you upgrade it, and it pops up a level, and now there's a bigger gun underneath it. The second gun shoots slower and tracks slower. So the top gun will just aim right at you and start blasting you, and the other gun would follow suit, but slightly slower and with heavier damaging bullets. You see where I'm going with this. And they would be able to track different targets. So if one was already somewhere and it caught a different target along the way, it would stop and shoot at them. So you could maybe even have a turret targeting different people, which is a different way to contend with it, spreading out its damage so you can overwhelm it instead of having to play peekaboo on one side. And then the final upgrade for it, the top of it would turn sideways, and it would have a little Tesla bolt thing. It would shoot just like a cartoony bolt of lightning that would hit a spot and explode for a big AoE of damage. It is the slowest and the biggest. Most of you know that's exactly how the rockets worked on the turret in Team Fortress 2, but not everybody knows that. I think this thing would create a really chaotic battlefield, which is part of the fun of Team Fortress 2, that it takes place in a state of almost perpetual anarchy. I think the different speeds and lock-ons gives it like more ways that you can kind of manage it and contend with it, and you know, it's better for different targets at different levels, blah blah blah. So the teleporter would be this like Tesla coil looking thing. You would place it down and it would have a handle, possibly two handles, I don't know its capacity, but other characters would walk up and you hit a button to grab it, and then it teleports you to the output. It's like a pole instead of a platform. I like this because it really clearly indicates who is next up to be teleported, and it lets you kind of queue up, like once people are gone, while it's recharging, you can walk up and physically grab it so nobody can jostle for a position over the teleporter. And then I also think the exit for it could be maybe small, like maybe the engineer could put it on like a wall or a ceiling or something, I don't know. But yeah, that's basically the idea. It would be this sort of electric, following our electric theme, it would zap people over to wherever they would go. And it would be particularly cool if that zap was an actual sprite that just like blasted through the map super fast. Didn't do damage or anything, but it just, you could follow it to where the teleporter was. I think that'd be interesting. But yeah, as it upgrades, it gets taller, its orb gets more dramatic, and it gets more handles to hold people. So instead of recharging quicker, it teleports more people at once. So that way, if your teleporter gets found out, sometimes you're still just sending an absolute mob of people through. And it adds a little bit of like risk reward to it as well. Like maybe you don't want to jump in with 4 people just in case there's a trap waiting on the other side. I don't know. It could work like the old one if it really needs to, but I just liked it this way. And then I do have a change for the dispenser as well. So the dispenser is the little landmine looking thing underneath the kind of hanging from the back of her belt. The idea of it is it would start as that little like disc kind of trash can looking situation, and then it unfolds into like a little tower as it goes. It drops a little base and then folds upward, but every time it does, it has more little compartments that just have like regular pickups in them. And the idea is it would have bullet and health pickups based on its level. At level 1 it would have small ones. Just whoever walks by it, it would distribute them just like normal, nothing to it. When you upgrade it and it gets up to level 2, it will respawn the small ones faster and then have like medium ammo and health things. And when you walk by, it just automatically gives you the most efficient combination. So if you only need a few bullets, it gives you one of the small ones, but if you need more, it gives you the bigger one, and the same distribution with your health. And then when you upgrade it the third way, it's all the ways up where it's got large health kits and stuff. And then I think the third upgrade one, like maybe the health kit can overheal you or something, like maybe it does something cool and slightly special. I like introducing the idea that these kits would have maybe a special buff stuff they would give out early on. That way, if we made different versions of them down the line, you could have them give out different stuff. But it doesn't have to do that. But anyway, yeah, the tower idea and that your character would just grab the appropriate amount. How is that different? It's really not. Like, it should restock fast enough that it's not that big a deal. But I feel like I've given a lot more advantage to the engineer and to like defensive players in general with the changes I've made. So like, I feel like them having a slightly wimpier dispenser is like kind of fine. And it really won't matter most of the time. Like, it won't mechanically change the game, but it will always look cool and support the aesthetic, which is important too. I've been drawing these characters for months. In a way, they're all my favorite, but the engineer is my favorite. The main change to the spy's design is that he got thicker. He got meatier and meatier the more I drew him, but it became my favorite aspect of him. He is almost like a cartoonish level thug, and design-wise, I just think it's delightful. It's so opposite from the spy that we know, but at least to me, it doesn't feel like contrarian. It's nice. So I think the spy is actually just an extremely skilled actor. I think he's a criminal who's very good at this, and he really appreciates the challenge. Like, he's such a good actor that being an actor wouldn't be interesting to him. He needs the thrill of being caught, potentially getting him killed. I don't mean that to imply that in universe he's an actor so good that Hollywood has no use for him. I just think like to him, he needs the danger for him to like really feel like he's doing his best work. He's got his edge. So to play against character, I think that he is good because he actually does work really, really hard on it. I think given the chance, he's the type of person who would pretend like it's just like natural skill or he's just talented or something like that. But the reality is whenever you're not looking, instead of playing cool, he's like frantically trying to make sure everything goes correctly. I've become very invested in the idea that he makes his own like prosthetics and makeup, and his whiskey, which is I've decided is how he turns invisible, is he's just got Invisa whiskey. It's homemade. That's part of the connection between all of the support team, is they're all like alchemists, kind of. Like the chemist, has like poison goo he throws on people, and the medic has a healing laser, and the spy has Invisa whiskey. Like, they all have kind of magic potions a little bit. So he would like trade in techniques with them so that he could learn better ways to make his prosthetics and his makeup and his salves and all the various, reagents he uses to get his Invisa whiskey just right. He learns a lot of that from them. And then he super meticulously like works on it and tries to get like all of it precisely right and exactly stable every time, so that later he can be like, yeah, I looked it up. Yeah, your thing's pretty cool. It works pretty good. His gun is just like a classic noir revolver, like the 38 Special, which I actually think is a really ugly gun. I'm not a fan of it, but there's no avoiding it on this picture. It is the weapon that he needs. And then the beaver tail. I know I said it before, but I'll say it again. Beaver tails are just naturally really funny to me. I couldn't quite figure out how to convey this in the image without a lot of extra work, but when he disguises himself as someone on the enemy team, he puts his little neckerchief up over his nose and face like a little bandito, but it would actually have the other person's face like crocheted onto it, or like maybe knitted or sewn. It would be a handmade neckerchief that has the design of that person's face on it. And then if you ever wanted to make a side grade for his disguise ability, it would be different handmade, maybe a crocheted one or something, like different handmade kerchiefs that he wears on his face. So I had a mechanical idea for his gun. Since he is the spy and I want to do something a little bit different for him, he's going to have like a tiny little flash suppressor on the front of his gun. And the way that's going to work is when he shoots his gun, it's quiet and it doesn't put like a big flash on the person that he shoots. It does the damage kind of quietly. And then each subsequent shot increases both the impact it has on the player in terms of whatever visual stuff you put in the game so that people know they got shot, and the noise that it makes. And that's represented visually by the flare on the muzzle of the gun getting brighter and brighter. And when you reload it, it resets. So you don't have to worry about it like as a constant thing, but it gives you a reason to kind of keep your gun topped off and really incentivize you to take advantage of your shots when you come out of invisibility. I think conversely as well, the damage might go up the louder it gets. I think that might be fun as well. So you sort of have the choice between going all in on an engagement and like going into the back of your clip a couple of times to get the extra damage, or trying to dodge and reload sooner so that you can shoot quieter and you're not popping up on the map quite as much. I don't know exactly how it would work, but you kind of see what I'm going for with that. Finally, a dedicated face stabbing mechanic for all of you who have been waiting. The spy's signature mechanic is insta-killing people from behind, so I wouldn't want to change that. But what I do want, mostly because it's funny, but also because it's great, is if you hit people in the front or the side, like if you don't get a backstab, I want it to disorient people. I want it to slow them a little bit and make their movement a little wonky. I don't know exactly how much you can do it without it becoming so obnoxious that it's a problem, but there's definitely an amount in there. We live in the future. We can have silly games again. Let me have this. It would be really funny. Imagine coming up on somebody as a spy and you got your freaking beaver tail ready and your hand lifts up because you know you're going to get the backstab and they turn it just the right time and you just wallop them across the face like a grandma with a slipper and they have to like have a little bit of a head bob and you can just kind of keep walloping on them and you're not doing very much damage, but you're just building up these hits and they're getting increasingly disoriented and then you can just wuss out and just absolutely hoof it while they're still kind of shook up and try to get out of the fight. That moment to me is extremely hilarious and I'd like it replicated in game when you have a 1v1 on like spy versus sniper and it goes wrong. So in general, I would have it do a lot less damage, but have some kind of mechanical debuff it puts on people that helps you make a getaway in the, the tightest terms. Oh, and there's one other thing we haven't talked about at all, and that's sappers and turrets. So quick bring you up to speed. In Team Fortress 2, one of the things that beats turrets is the spy. He can put this little magic box on them that electrocutes them and makes them blow up eventually. The engineer can get rid of it by hitting it, and then his thing is safe, but if he doesn't get there in time, it blows up. Its purpose is just to cause a bunch of havoc and get the engineer stressed out about leaving his turret alone. It's a paranoia weapon, basically. And it's kind of a skill check for the spy because it's like an extra weapon you have to pull out, so you're kind of juggling between, gun, reload, you're watching your disguise, you're trying to put... It's just another thing to sort of keep track of. So I have a different version of that would just sort of be on a button, and I know it kind of sucks to lame it down and put it just on a singular button, but I feel like spies just have enough to worry about. The one thing the spy class doesn't need is to be harder to play. So what it would be is when you're near a turret or a whatever machine thing you can destroy, like a dispenser, anything you could destroy with a sapper, you have a button and the animation on your character will show you just like banging on it or like sticking your hand in and knocking stuff around or just whatever, some comical motion that shows someone trying to low-key rip a machine apart, like you're trying to steal from a vending machine type energy. The other people on the enemy team just won't see you do that. So while you're next to it, you just do really fast damage to it. I think it might be cool to take a page, to take a page from the red tape recorder from Team Fortress 2, which instead of doing damage, it regresses the turret. It like de-ages it somehow. And in Team Fortress 2, it's not very useful. But in this game, I think it's interesting because damage is sort of all or nothing, but upgrading a turret adds like more work. So the increased risk of having to stand there might mean that like after a second, or if you're not caught really quickly, you can take a turret down a level and he has to completely re-upgrade it and it can change the battlefield dynamic very quickly. So I would like it to work like that. I don't know if that's a good idea because ultimately it might be too easy to get found out as a spy. Maybe it's a crappier mechanic. I don't know. But that's the way I envisioned it, is that he would just beat on stuff like the Fawns and it would slowly tear it apart. Oh, and look what's coming out of invisibility. It's the Invisi-Whiskey. It's his personal potion. Turns him invisible. Simple as. It's not likely there will ever be a Team Fortress 3. And if there is, I'm very unlikely to get to design it. But that was never the point of this. What this was more than anything was a chance to just roll around in Team Fortress 2 like a pig in the mud. To go back and revisit the designs, the ideas, the bright colors, the explosions, the deaths, the bizarre animation, the sort of surreal experience of playing a first-person shooter where none of your first-person shooter skills seem to help you function on any level. It was all there just the way I remembered it, waiting for me to get in and die over and over and over. But there was kind of this extra joy to it, because I knew that I was sort of closing the book. In making this video, I'm kind of saying goodbye to Team Fortress 2. I don't think I'm ever likely to go and play it again. But it's such a big part of my life, I wanted to send it off. So I submit to you, the community, these 9 designs of my own meticulous creation. I personally love all of them. I don't want to be here like patting myself on the back for doing a good job before it is proven that I have done that, so to speak. But I've been working on this so long that like I don't really have a choice. If I hated a design, it'd be gone by now. But I don't care. I like them the way they are. So one more time for the road. Soldier, Scout, Heavy, Demo, Sniper, Engineer, Chemist, Medic, Spy. 9 freelancers. Here to steal briefcases, here to blow stuff up, here to talk trash, here to flaunt the basic laws of physics, and most importantly, here to push the damn cart. Whew, okay, it's done. The video's finally over. Thank you. Thank you for sitting through the whole thing. I don't know how you did. This is my first long video, like what you might call like a long video, wherein everything was, pieced together and scripted and kind of meticulously planned. And it has been an experience. I truly hope you enjoyed it. Making this video has been a really bizarre experience. It may not seem like much from the outside looking in. It probably just sort of seems like an overproduced fan art video. And it is. It for sure, that's a great explanation for it. And it's like that because I really wanted to do it. Why this topic was so important to me, it's hard to say. Why this much effort, hard to say. But it is one of the most fun experiences I have ever had in my life, comfortably. Going back and doing all the research and taking piles and piles of notes on Quake Fortress and Team Fortress Classic and Half-Life Team Fortress so that I could come up with a giant pile of ideas, most of which didn't even make it into the video. Playing Team Fortress 2 again to just compare my presuppositions about characters to the reality of playing them. Catching up on where strategies are in 2024 and how differently the game is played from the time that I did. It really did feel like coming home. However this may look from the outside, it has been a roller coaster getting this thing put together. And I want to do it more. I would do lots of these. I would do many videos just like this if I had the opportunity. So if you liked it, do the things. Please show it around. Let this be my most earnest and least fork-tongued call to action in the history of this channel. I work mostly as a freelance artist, which is a humble job of meager means. If I didn't live somewhere where it is cheap to live, I would never have been able to even make this video. So if it did anything for you, please show it around. Now I gotta get out of here. It seems like it might rain tonight, and I need to record something up on my roof.